feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming to you Monday afternoon. It's September 23rd, 1 week away from Wolves training camp beginning. And longtime Wolves fans know that 1 week before training camp means Britt Robson drops his hour-long Q&A with the Wolves head coach, whoever the Wolves head coach is at the time. I think this is Britt's fourth time doing this interview with Finch. So this whole episode is going to be Britt and I just talking about the interesting stuff Finch said to him during the time when those two talked a couple weeks ago. If you haven't checked out the Q&A already, you can find the first two parts as of Monday when I'm recording this are up at MinnPost.com, or I'd linked the article in the show notes. It is a loaded article. It is the best way to kind of get your brain on Wolves mode as the season approaches. But quickly, also a couple other announcements before I bring Britt in. I wanted to note, number one being that Kyle and I are going to go live on YouTube this Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Central. If you'd like to join us, it's just going to be a normal podcast with the two of us, but we'll be doing it live, and we'll also be taking questions from the live audience in the chat feature on YouTube. So as you know, we were kind of looking for things to talk about. We'll let you guys kind of guide the conversation there. We thought it'd be a fun way to sort of kick things off. Again, if you can attend live, that'd be 7 p.m. Otherwise, it'll be up on YouTube, immediately logged afterwards, or Thursday morning. It should be up in podcast version. Then I also wanted to announce, which I'll be bugging you about a bunch over the next couple of weeks, but we will be doing Wolves Fest again at Falling Knife Brewing Company on October 19th this year at 3 p.m. It's going to be like a Wolves-themed brewery day. Britt and I will be there for just sort of an afternoon-themed Wolves-themed block party. It starts at 3 p.m., so we'll just kind of hang. There'll be other Wolves-related vendors there. I think the Naz Reid tattoo guy is going to be there to have a tattoo booth. I don't know about that. I'm not getting one, but I think he's going to be there. It's going to be a whole bunch of Wolves stuff. And then Britt and I will do kind of a live show, also probably kind of Q&A like we have many times at Falling Knife. That'll be around 5 p.m., but it's really just kind of a Wolves-themed block party that they do to kind of kick off the season. October 19th is a couple days before the first game of the year on October 22nd. I also want to say, just because this is cool, kind of on a personal level, I went to Falling Knife last Friday morning to be there while they began brewing a new beer that myself and Falling Knife, I guess, are partnering on. I don't know, like partner. I'm not doing anything, so I don't really know how much of a silent partner in it, other than I think my face is going to be on the cans, but super cool. I had nothing to do with the making of the beer, so it'll still be very good Falling Knife quality beer, but that's gonna be fun. We came up with Second Apron for the name of the beer. They're gonna release the beer at Wolves Fest again on October 19th. Again, 3 p.m. live event, block party, all that sort of stuff. But it's gonna be cool to have a, I guess, me themed beer, calling it Second Apron. We'll bug you about Wolves Fest plenty over the next couple of weeks. Would love to get a bunch of people out there and have you try out the beer that is, again, being released that day. Yeah, it was just cool to be there and watch beer be brewed. I don't know. I've never done that before. I kind of had no idea of how much goes into brewing beer or how long it took. Like they started, what was that, Friday, 3 days ago, started brewing this beer, and it's like a 3-4 week kind of process end to end of starting to brew it and carbonating and all, fermentation, all that sort of stuff to be able to have it ready for the Wolves Fest on October 19th. So really excited about Second Apron and want to thank Falling Knife for, wanting a me themed beer. It's super cool. But I'm also really excited to talk to Britt about this Finch interview. So let's bring him in. All right, we are now joined by Britt Robson from MinnPost, obviously the author of this Finch Q&A that came out last Friday over at MinnPost. Britt, I think probably we do this every year, but I think the best place to start, people have heard this before, is just kind of like the history of you doing this with Finch, but also just in general. You've been doing a preseason Q&A for a while now.
Yeah, I think it started with Flip. And then we did it. I did it mid-season with Sam Mitchell one time because he was kind of pissed off that people were thinking he was dumb and, he wanted to go out of his way to prove he wasn't. That was a great interview.
So he said, Britt, get over here.
Well, actually, Bob Hummel, who was a friend of both Sam Mitchell's and mine, connected us up. But
not Robbie Hummel. I feel like we have to say that every single time. Every single time you bring up your buddy Bob Hummel.
That's right. And so, and then I did Tibbs one year, not 1 year, but did another year. And so anyway, yeah, it's definitely. And then I think this is either 3 or 4 with Finch now, but I've probably done a dozen of them at some point in time for various publications. So, yeah, it's
set the scene. Like, what does it look like? Like you go there, you're going into the facility. This is you guys talk for over an hour, all recorded on the record. What does that look like?
I basically come into Mayo Clinic Square, wait in the little A&T room for a minute. Then they say he's okay, and they're working out personnel, and Sarah Perez says, you don't see anything, nobody, all this other stuff. And then you go into the office, and we sit down and I say, usual rules apply. If you don't say before you say it, it's off the record. It's on the record. If you say something is off the record, it will be off the record. He did do 2 things that were off the record. Both of them were to protect. One was to protect information, and one was to not slag on a guy that he didn't necessarily share the opinion of what was being slagged. So those are the only 2 things that aren't in it. Otherwise, it's pretty much verbatim, as it always is. He goes out of his way to he does what he does at the press conferences all year long, which is makes the questioner sound smarter than the question.
It is his style of answering is really good. And again, to listeners right now, or going to readers to go check it out, he's just a good talker, right? Like there is
incredible.
It is concise. And when it's on a topic that, a topic that you and I spend so much time thinking about, but also so many listeners and stuff like these, the questions, Britt asked are the questions that those of us who are like diving into this team are thinking about. And they're all clearly things that Finch has thought about himself too. So it's not like talking points that he has related to it. It's just good, like concise, thought-provoking, at least to me, answers that get your juices going for.
I mean, I always do a prep where I write down all the questions, and then I look at them like before I get in my car and drive down there, and then I bring it in. But I can't remember a time when I've looked at my questions while we were working. I mean, it's always something where it's kind of like a safety valve if I need it, but I never need it because the conversation is so easy. And the ways, if I did have my questions in order or whatever, I'd miss, I mean, what I'd like to do is just react to what he's saying naturally. And sometimes I'll toss opinions at him that give him a chance to rebut or, further get into that detail. So I have learned with him that I need to be prepared going in terms of what I feel about the team and what I know statistically and all the things I kind of want to ask him. But then after that, we just talk.
Yeah. Which is always what, like I try and send Britt outlines sometimes for what we're going to do about pods. He goes, I don't care. He goes, which is
because I get nervous. I get nervous with structure. Right. So
so does Chris Finch. There you go.
I think so. I mean, except when,
I got there. No, I'm kidding. So the interview start. Well, actually, why don't you tell people when we're recording? Britt and I are recording this 11:15 on Monday morning. Parts 1 and parts 2 are out of the 70-minute conversation. There's a part 3 and part 4 coming out. That's later this week.
Tuesday and Wednesday, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So those will be out here by middle of the week. because it is long. I focused a little bit more on parts 1 and parts 2 today. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, and that's stuff people can read like by the time they hear this. Yeah,
but maybe there'll be other things that we bring up that come from
that.
later.
And I think that's fair game because the way he talks about things, I think it's a good read. He's just one of those guys that I mean. When I transcribe Finch, transcribing is the worst part of my job. I mean, I hate it. I just got through with a huge Tim Connolly story that won't be out until like November, December from Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine. And I had to do like a ton of interviews because that took me forever to get to interview Connolly himself. And I'm worried as I worry, I talk to other people. But meanwhile, I have all the stuff, and it's just like pulling teeth after a while. Sit down with Finch, 70 minutes. Oh, man, that's right. He said that. So it's like it was an easy transcription.
Yeah. That is 70 minutes times whatever. Yeah, that's a lot of hours. You stay out of the transcriptions day to day in the media room with me, John, Chris, and Jace. But that's how I know that I'm not a beat writer, is when we split it all up. And those 3 guys are done, and I'm like, I need 10 more minutes here. But okay, so anyways, we're gonna focus on parts 1 and parts 2 a little bit. Just that's what I have notes on. The interview starts with Finch, or you asking, and Finch talking about reestablishing the identity in training camp, which is coming up here. And in that, Finch wisely notes that defense was the identity last season, and that's why they got there, but also understanding that what you're really asking about is what is this offensive identity going to look like. You guys kind of expanded on the tweaks to the offensive identity after that. Highlighted 1, reestablishing some better chemistry between Cat and Ant, also kind of Ant and Rudy in there. 2, giving the ball to Jaden McDaniels a little bit more. And then 3, quote, can we go bigger? Can we get Naz Reid some extended minutes at the 3? I'd like to talk about all 3 of those things.
Yeah.
Great topics. Which one of those 3 you want to start with?
Well, let's do them the way we took them. And so Cat and Ant. And that was kind of he kind of hammered on that a little bit, or in that exit presser, whatever you want to call it, the day after they were eliminated by Dallas. Yeah, exit interview. He mentioned that Ant and Cat don't play together in an efficient way, in the best way they can play together. And he said it wasn't like malicious. It's just that they have their own style that's different. And so I kind of followed up with that and said, can you clarify that in terms of what they mean? And he, I thought, did a pretty good job of, pretty much saying that they get tunnel visioned and they don't recognize and then hammer the most efficient parts of their 2-man game. And he cited 2 very specific examples, which was cool because it does immediately give you a sense of what he wants. And the first one was when you post Cat up, he could give it back to Ann if he cuts baseline, and that's a score almost every time. Why doesn't that happen more often? And then the other one was trail 3s. If somebody has the ball at the top of the key, usually he's talking about Ant in this case, and Cat comes down, why don't you swing? And that can work either way, whether it's whoever's at the top of the key, whoever can swing is the way I got it. They don't look to hit that incoming 3 that, catch the ball and shoot it. And actually both of them are very good at it,
Right.
So it is, again, and oftentimes they're open. So
I thought they were great examples because it's what he's citing for both Cat and Ant is 2 of the things that really bog down their individual offense, right? For Cat, if he's in the post and he's getting, more than one body, right, in his vicinity when he's getting guarded, that's when the turnovers happen. That's when some of that straight voltage stuff happens. Okay, so how do we take advantage of the second body that's kind of ignoring the rest of the context of the defense? Well, we have our 6'5" freak athlete just kind of rub right off his shoulder, and that's a drop off. Look, the 2 defenders can't stay on Ant there. What I was picturing in that situation, if Ant does just dive there, you know what's going to be there, if particularly if it's baseline. Well, let's just get to that Cat right hook. You know, the Cat just go middle. And what were you going to say?
Well, that's what I mean when I said, do you think it's because Cat thinks I don't need to cut there? I'll just hit my little baby hook over this guy. But what you're saying is, imagine if you don't even have the guy to go over, you know?
Right, exactly.
And that is true. I mean, and that is one of Cat's best shots. So what you're facing there is the choice between a bunny for Cat or a slam for Ant. And it makes total sense that the 17th most efficient offense in the NBA last year might want to get better by doing things like that. And Finch, you know, I'm sure he's looked at the numbers and he said, we score almost every time off that. Why don't we do that more often?
Well, and then it's the same thing with the Ant play we're talking about with the trail 3 to Cat is what do we talk about all playoffs, right? What Phoenix, or particularly, it was a big reason why it seemed like Phoenix had some answers against Ant, specifically in this Wolves, and that's why Phoenix was favored. Well, they were just loading up that gap help on Ant, and now Ant's driving downhill, and it's just a wall of, you know, multiple defenders. So it's like, well, what is the easiest way to, you know, loosen up this gap help? Right. It's like, put another guy right there that, you know, you can't be on both of them. That guy's a 40-something%, you know, 3-point shooter there. It is interesting. It almost like what he read if I'm being honest, I read that, kind of laughed, screenshotted it, and sent it to one of my friends who's a coach. And it is like, this is what we tell kids in high school. It's just like basic, you know, kind of like just recognize this sort of stuff, which what I love about Finch is that's obviously not how he means it. He doesn't mean that in a any bit of derogatory way to Cat or to Ant. It's just like, hey, here's the light bulb, just screw it in, you know.
And there's the switch. All you gotta do is flip your finger up, right? And so it is. It's a he was loaded for bear because I'm sure if he hasn't already, that's what he's going to be talking to Ant and Cat about, you know. And you know, when you get the ball on the block or whatever. And what I think is especially cool about that is I'm as confident on Cat on above the break threes as I am any player in the NBA. I mean, I just think that guy, when he's above the break and he's wide open and steps into that shot, I'm always surprised if it doesn't go in. Yeah,
it's no hesitation, just like let it rip. Yeah.
Right. And when he hits a couple, you know, it's going to be a good game.
It's Chris and I did a pod last week or like a week and a half ago, just kind of like some questions about that we want to have answered in training camp. And obviously, you know, the offense came up, and one of my questions is just simply more Cat the answer to better offense? But like, yes, right. The answer to that is obvious. Like in a vacuum is yes, but for one reason or the other, that 3-point volume just won't go up, right? And that's the thing we always point to. But spending some time on it, I was looking into it, and like Cat was really good in the post in the postseason. And then even I was like looking at his points per possession numbers. It was like the first time in post-up situations that he was back to over a point per possession since the Tibbs days. You know, remember how that was a thing?
It was really good.
It was like literally the best in the NBA. It was like him and Jokic and Embiid back then. And then it just kind of plummeted during the Saunders Finch era, or the beginning of the Finch era there. And I just, again, reading that, it was like one of the first things in there. I'm like, that's it, right? Like, if we can get Cat a little bit more from 3, and I think more Cat in the post. But I haven't talked to you in a while. Like, what do you think about the offense being more Cat post centric as it was?
Well, it brings up another thing Finch said somewhere else in the interview, which is that when he deals with Rudy, he passes to Rudy like 80% of the time.
I think he said 90.
And so Finch says, we'd like him to, you know, either find somebody else to pass to or shoot the ball. And that's my thing too, is sometimes I feel like there's this weird ego-driven thing for Cat where he wants to prove he's a good teammate and he's a willing passer, and he's, you know, and instead of just doing the smarter thing, which is if you are a great shooter and you have that shot,
let it rip.
Take that shot, And so, and I'm sure Finch was kind of feeling the same way. At the same time, another one of Finch's soapboxes is nobody feeds Rudy. So he has one guy that feeds Rudy more than anybody and concentrates on him all the time. So it is kind of funny that dynamic he has to play there. You can't tell the guy who feeds Rudy or wants to feed Rudy more than anybody to feed him less while you're telling everybody else, pay attention to this guy.
Well, let's talk about that from the Ant Rudy context, because Finch, the first thing he brought up was, again, reestablishing some better chemistry between Cat and Ant. But then kind of in that, he got into Ant can do more. Ant could do more for Rudy as well and play make. And this is like a little bit getting caught up in the moment of what I'm about to say, but I think it's true. And I think it's kind of a long shot that it comes to pass.
Yeah.
But if Ant's path to winning MVP this year, or if you really want to put him in that type of conversation, it's this stuff. It's the can you reestablish a better connection with Cat offensively in the ways we just talked about playing off of him and allowing Cat to play off of him, but also the Rudy part. And I would almost say the Rudy part is almost as important because Rudy can help him. And that's what Finch talks about with you, is creating advantages for him. But can Ant take those advantages and give that advantage back to Rudy for the easy, obvious lob dunk bucket sort of things? If Ant is able to put those things together, we talk about what the next leap is for Ant, to me, it's that. And that is the not sexy stuff.
And Finch was saying it's kind of a chicken or egg thing. If you want Rudy to not clog your drives, feed Rudy when it matters the most.
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing. It isn't like what he's saying is Rudy has learned to live with the fact that he's on a team that won't give him quite as much deference as they gave him in Utah. But he also is willing to do that if he gets a little. He doesn't want the big portion, but he wants a guaranteed portion through certain ways that he can act. And what Finch is saying there is, if you want Rudy to stay out of your way, then don't have him constantly thinking about getting a feed. Make it the situations where it's most obvious. And that way, when he is doing the right thing at the right time, Ant sees that he's doing the right thing at the right time and rewards him. If that happens, then Rudy will be more deferential to when Ant needs a different kind of space, because Ant is doing one of those jagged drives that you don't want to get in his way at all.
Quote, the more Ant can find him in the flow and on the drive, the more patient with spacing Rudy will be.
There you go.
Which was a big thing for the offense, particularly the second half of the season. With Rudy, it is patience with spacing. Like Rudy is, because he's extending that spot to the dunker spot. He's staying in the slot a little bit more. But year one, all you got to think about is what did year one,
and that's Rudy what Finch mentioned.
Impatience. It looked like Rudy impatient with spacing because he was just like, all right, I'm here, and you get that as a big, right? Of it's hard to be patient as a big, no matter what your skill set is, if you're not being freaking guarded. Which was a Denver series, in a nutshell. It's hard to not just be like, all right, here I am at 6 feet. And no one else is here. But we also know that there's a bit of a give and take to that.
Yeah. And I mean, it was something that Finch brought up on various occasions about, when we were talking about transition, he said, Rudy runs the floor as well as anybody on the team.
That was totally a shot at everyone else. That was a little bit of a compliment to Rudy, but it's like, why is this guy the one most consistently running in transition? I like that too. I'm going to get into the can we go bigger with Naz thing, but I want to hit our break.
That's the sexy beat.
Oh man, that got me going. When I saw that, let me grab our break here. Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lana at Coldwell Banker Realty. We've been telling you about Adriana for a long time, and what she is able to do to help you find and buy a home here in Minnesota or Wisconsin. She also has, specific to the listeners here, a little incentive to come and schedule a consultation if that's something you're interested in, is the opportunity to win some free Wolves tickets that go along with that. Basically, the biggest thing is look, if you're gonna need to buy a house, you're gonna need a realtor. It's gonna, and we're just suggesting have it come from our Wolves community here. If you do want to just get in contact with Adriana, you can go to thedancingrealtor.com, which I have up on the screen, or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920 to book a strategy session. And again, you'll be entered to win some Wolves tickets. I know a couple fans got that opportunity last year. Again, dancingrealtor.com if you're in the house buying market. And then also our show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. If you already own a home, right? I know there's people out there trying to get something done home improvement wise before the winter kicks in here. They have a deal. I mean, they do all sorts of home improvement companies at yourhomeimprovementco.com. You can go there. But specifically, they have deals on windows and bathroom renovations right now. The bathroom deal is 30% off a full shower or tub to shower conversion, full bathroom remodel. That's a big deal they have. And then windows is buy two, get two free here in the fall. Again, these are just kind of projects you might want to get done before winter rolls around, and they're trying to incentivize you with some deals. We love Steve Little from Your Home Improvement Company. He's a huge Wolves fan, sitting courtside at all the games. You can contact Your Home Improvement Company at 866-777-YHIC, or just by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. All right, Britt, let's talk about the Timberwolves lineup made better. Yeah. It's funny how much of the Naz at the 3 thing was legitimately like a joke last year. Right. Remember that I don't know if you were at that Naz's press conference when he signed his
new deal. I did see
the
that.
Boys and Girls Club.
And then in fact, Finch mentioned it, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he kind of mentioned that he was joking about. He said it at that thing. He goes, "Well, who knows? Maybe we'll play."
Yeah,
we'll
that community center in South Minneapolis. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And then he did, and we were asking about it in training camp last year, like it was serious, and he was like, "Oh yeah, maybe we'll do it here and there." He goes, "You guys really love that one, right?" Well, it sounds like they got the opportunity to see a little bit last season with all 3 of the bigs together. And I don't know if it's given some of the roster, how the roster has evolved, or just maybe how Naz has really continued to ascend. It sounds like that's really on the table this year as being part of the answer, maybe not just for the offense, but just in general for this team, as a way to get Naz Reid, one of your best players, on the floor more often.
Well, and what I would connect, I kind of connect these dots. That's the way I felt about it when he was talking about it. The Jaden getting the ball more, and the Naz being in the rotation more as the smallest of the front court players, or whatever you want to call it, the small forward position. These are a way to extend your championship competitive status without adding money. What you want is your guys you're already paying. You're not paying them the max, but you're paying them a lot. And what you want is for those guys to be quasi-max players.
Sure.
If not now, 2 or 3 years down the road, so that you don't have to stay in that second apron forever. And in the meantime, because of the way the roster, you lost Monte Morris, you lost Kyle Anderson. There's going to be, you have Rob Dillingham, who's a rookie in the mix. The young guys are mostly, they are springy front court guys, so you may be going that way kind of in general anyway. Mm-hmm. It's a way to not diminish your existing veteran strength, but at the same time, getting a little practice in for what it might be like in 2 or 3 years when you don't have some of these huge contracts around. Right. And I guess what I'm saying is, to me, it felt like kind of an ingenious way to have it make sense today and make sense in 2027 or 2028. And so Naz at the 3, he may not be at the, if Rudy and/or Cat are gone in 2 or 3 years, maybe he'll be at the 5, but he'll be at the 5 as a 3, and he will be getting a lot of minutes, punishing people in ways that are that skilled Biggs Finch template that he loves so much. So I think that's part of it. And I also think that Finch wants to, and he wants to play flow. Naz is probably the best fast flow player on the team.
Totally.
And that's, Finch recognizes that. And
that's why I don't get the downside here. Like that where I'm at, and I've been at for a while, is to me, Naz is more of a 3 than a 5. And I'm not saying 4 would be the ideal one. 4 is probably the best. That probably makes the most sense, because then you put him in maybe less trying defensive situations that he would have to navigate that Finch managed there, or mentioned in the piece. But I don't think Naz has ever been a very good center.
Right.
I think Naz has gotten better as he's positionally slid down. Like, what about Naz at center is actually some of his best stuff? He's not a very good drop defender, right? He's never been a super strong rebounder. He had a better rebounding season last year, but that's because he was playing the 3 and the 4 mostly, I think. He's not a big screen center. Like,
if he goes up against Mike Muscala in Oklahoma City or something, that's when he had those games. But he doesn't play. Joel Embiid just terrorizes him, So again,
and that's okay.
Because he's not 264 pounds of heavy body fat anymore. He is a sculpted 200, and I think he looks about 235, 240 at the most.
I remember last year in the locker room, and we're talking about how much weight he lost from summer league. And so this is probably almost exactly 12 months ago, maybe 10 months ago. And I'm pretty sure he said he was 286 or 284 at Summer League, that first one. He said he was down
because he was trying to get to be a center in the NBA.
Yes, right. And well, they didn't. That's what he was kind of like drafted to be.
Right.
And then he was down to 237.
That makes sense. And and you could tell.
Totally.
Look, everybody, I always have to say this because it's important to recognize when you missed on something. I did not think Naz was going to be nearly the player he was, or even the type of player he is. It's been miraculous to me to see his bag on handles, on up and unders, on now 3-point accuracy. I don't see how you don't regard him as a weapon that can be a wing. And I said in the interview, because Finch and I went at this during the season a couple of times, where I'd say, you always say you are what you guard. Well, doesn't Naz guard threes best? And he said no a couple of times. So then in the interview, I said, you and I disagree on this, which means you're probably right. But I always thought not more than 5. And he goes, 100%.
I saw that too. I almost texted you right there. I was like, oh, wait.
Well, excellent. I'm glad to hear that. And so what it was, I'm sure, is he did not want to open that door at that point in the season, you know?
Sure.
But now with a fresh slate, he wants to open that door a little bit. And I think he's
he
right.
wants to open it up more than a little bit. Yeah. Because it already was open a little bit.
Okay. But then here's the issue with that. The issue is you got Jaden, Ant, and Mike Conley. Who sits?
I'm not saying start Naz.
I know, but that rotation, if that rotation is rolling, how are you going to, somebody's going to get cramped a little bit.
Yeah, man, but we know. It's just, it's rotations. It's
right.
You're
And injuries and
yeah,
vicarities and matchups, all that will take care of it. But I do think if
we got to answer that question in the playoffs, and that's a long ways away, right?
Okay.
About what you want to really be, when you're down to like 7-8 guys and you're really trying to be conscientious of that. I think during the season, it's just about, do I want to boost Naz's minutes? Like last year, Naz in the games that Cat played in, or it was actually just the games that Naz came off the bench, it's like 23 minutes a game. Like it's got to be higher than that, right? And given that you lose a Kyle Anderson,
right,
and just that he's kind of on the come up,
right.
and I think to Finch's point is like there's no, what is the path to that when you still have Cat and Rudy other than this? I just hope. Sorry, maybe I was projecting a little bit with like opening the door up a little bit wider, but I think if you're going to do this, you got to do it. Like it can't just be 2 minutes here and there. And I'd reference this. You remember 2 seasons ago, Rudy's first season, worst 2-man pairing on the team.
Rudy and Naz.
Rudy and Naz, right? Terrible. Minus
one of the best this year.
Exactly.
90.8 or something ridiculous.
Defense rating.
Defense, yeah.
But the difference was, if you remember that 2 years ago, they would play like a little like 90-second, 2-minute bridge together to get back to Cat or to get back to Kyle out there. Right. It wasn't extended stretches of it. And I think why specifically last season, Rudy and Naz played better together, and the numbers, obviously, like you just said, scream that, is because they went from playing 2-minute stints together at a time to 6-minute, to real genuine, like, we are trying to get to this. This isn't a bridge. And I would say if you're going to do the quote unquote 3 bigs thing, I think it's got to be something that gets the chance to get comfortable, right? You might even, the first 90 seconds of it might always be kind of rough or at least initially. So let it still get that like 5-6 minute stretch of time together. I think that would be the way, at least, to, if it's going to work, it would work best that way. And I think part of that is just Naz is like a rhythm sort of guy, and he needs to get rhythm with what his surroundings are.
2 things. I think that Rudy and Naz are much better on defense than Cat and Naz. If Naz is the quote unquote 4,
Yeah, people are probably thinking about the the Jokic, and like we don't want to take that away from Cat. Cat was obviously
no, and definitely, yeah. And there's obviously matchups. This is a huge matchup driven concept.
Great point.
If you were dealing with a team that likes to go small, and I said this to Finch, when he thinks about a team going small, punish him in the paint. But I think if Naz and Cat take smalls out on the perimeter, I think they can take them off the dribble. I really do, because they still have the size and they both score on the run. Now, the problem, of course, is turnovers, especially with Naz. He shows the ball too much. That is probably his biggest weakness on offense. But
yeah, the strips.
I do think that there's so much you can do with those 3 bigs on the court at the same time, but there's also so much flexibility in 2 or 3 player combinations there. And then if you add in it's become my favorite combination on the floor among 2 players. And it began with the Iowa Ants, is Ant and Naz on the floor, especially if you have a guy like J-Mac, and this time it would be Dillingham. But if you just get out and run, Ant and Naz are 2 of the best finishers, if not the best finishers on the team, and they both can stop on a dime and just chuck up the ball quickly, whether it's a pull-up mid-range for Ant or a pull-up 3 for Naz. This team can play fast. We talk about transition points. A Naz Ant combination with any number of players involved can work well, especially if it's against second units. I think they could terrorize second units.
Well, this gets into the next thing was you guys talked about in part 2, which was just transition. This team getting out in transition more. And you bring that up, and I thought it was totally fair and a good reminder by Finch that he goes, well, remember at year one of Rudy, we couldn't rebound. So we were really focused on rebounding and completing defensive possessions, which, takes away from some of the leak outs because you're getting yelled at by Corliss Williamson on the bench if you're leaking out,
Right.
So now it's like kind of trying to reestablish maybe a little bit more trust in your rebounding, a little bit more leaking out to get some of those opportunities in transition, which are just easy money. But he also was like, they don't have a really physically fast team. And then I love the line, and he goes, and then some of our faster guys don't run. Ant is not a great runner of the floor.
Right.
But with Naz, he runs more. When there's more of that energy of we're getting up, and J-Mac too.
Right.
And theoretically, I think we give Dillingham some of that. Just
if we exactly. You gotta hope that Dillingham has that J-Mac gene in him that, hey, here we go. And I think he probably does.
I mean, the tape in summer league and in college screams that he's that guy. And as he's catching the ball, he's already like turning and running and pushing ahead. Like he's just that type of player.
Right. And so I really do think that if you have that, and then he mentions Jaden not having to stay with his man.
That was great.
At the top of the key, he said, I've got this over here. And he points behind my back, and I look over, and it's like this chalkboard is stuffed with numbers, and apparently some tiny corner of those numbers had to do with rebounds gotten by a 3-point shooter of his own rebound. How often does that happen?
Right.
So,
Never.
Because otherwise, I mean, if Jaden has to box out somebody at the arc who's a 3-point shooter, what happens if he leaks out because he's already a third of the way to the other hoop? And he's a 6'10" guy, he's spidery, and you just throw a lead pass to him. I mean, he said that's efficient. That's the way you get a small but significant, And so it is. These are things. Finch is obviously thinking about ways to be efficient. And the thing about transition, the way that you can sum up the transition problem in a nutshell, the Wolves turned over opponents more than any team in the NBA last year, and they were next to last in fast break points. They were 29th. I mean, that's just mind-boggling because that's how you get fast break points. Mm-hmm. You turn somebody over and then you go.
Right. Finch, direct quote, drives me nuts. Is what he said in there. I do think Jaden, Ant, Naz, and Dillingham are all a big part of that. And that, and that was the.
And what else is a big part of? Like the 28-29 Timberwolves.
Yeah, the future. But the Jaden one is interesting, and it's the always question with Jaden, right? Of like, how do you get him more? How do you get him more offense? How do you get a little bit more usage, a little bit more points per game, that sort of thing? Transition is the answer, and I know he was talking about like, okay, you're contesting the 3-point shot, and maybe you can just leak out there. But I also just started thinking about it of like, man, I get why Jaden hasn't totally blown up in transition in a good way. That's just hard, man. It's like, all right, here I am on James Harden, turn, bump, fighting off the shot, and then immediately I gotta go like get up the floor and sprint.
Right.
And I think, and obviously like Jaden is so good at that job defensively. He's one of the best on-ball perimeter defenders in the entire league. But there's this Jaden can do other things too. And if you can passively have somebody else guard the ball, as we see Ant do situationally, right? As we've seen like the more opportunities of that. I mean, remember the Denver series when
absolutely
when Jaden was he's the weak side rim protector because he's guarding the guy in the quarter because Naz up on Jamal Murray. Like Jaden could be a force as a weak side rim protector. So I just think as good as Jaden is on the ball defensively, if you can lower that some, you get more transition out of Jaden. which means more offense.
Mm-hmm.
You probably get fewer fouls if he's playing off ball, just because you're not going to get those hand check block sort of things. And but the question is, how much are you sacrificing on the ball? Nikhil's very good, but you lose Kyle Anderson, who was a big part of that last year.
Yeah, I agree.
As an on-ball defender, how much is Ant going to do that during the regular season? I would love to see Jaden get out in transition. I just wonder how much that comes at the cost of the frequency that he's on ball. And
I'll tell you, my biggest worry there is Jaden is so locked in. I mean, we talk in the locker room, all his teammates talk about, man, it's just a one-on-one matchup within the game. Jaden is just laser focused on his guy not beating him all the time. And that's one of the reasons he gets in foul trouble sometimes. It gets so personal that they get chippy with each other. And the next thing you know, he's getting a dumb foul because he's just so pissed off. How do you lower the intensity without extinguishing the intensity? Not extinguishing, but diluting it to the point where you begin to mess with who he is.
Totally.
And so, and if you tell him one of the reasons we're doing this is so you can get more offense, he's going to light up on that, and he's going to begin to buy into that. Well, if he buys into that offensive role, is he still going to be Jaden McDaniels when you need him to be Jaden McDaniels? That's what I worry about. I think it's a delicate operation.
Totally.
To figure out how to keep, Mad Dog Jaden in that Mad Dog mode when you need him to lock people up, and when he can be weak side Jaden, which isn't quite as much work but still requires some attention, and then also be scoring Jaden, not only in like tight curls to get to the hoop around Rudy, maybe with a pick and roll drop off or a lob or whatever, but also in transition where he's going to get the most points if he's smart. I think that one of the good things is, and Finch mentioned this too, the last third of the season, he was becoming again a really good, probably for the first time, a really good two-way player. I just said this last night at Berlin when I was talking with Andrew Broder, and he was talking about Jaden, and everybody's mentioning what a great defender Jaden is. And I said, it kind of felt like this actor who should have won the Oscar for 2 years. And then he's in a good role, but he's not in like the best role of his career, and he gets the Oscar. That's the way I felt about Jaden on defense last year. He wasn't as good on defense as he's been the previous 2 years, in my opinion. The Wolves, for the first time in his career, allowed more points per possession when he was on the floor than when he was off the floor. And so I do think, and part of that was he got in tremendous foul trouble early, and he got cautioned, you can't keep doing this. He had to learn how not to foul the team. I mean, other opponents have wised up on him, which isn't to say that Jaden McDaniels isn't a great on-ball defender and an asset and being paid precisely for that reason. Mm-hmm. But I am saying that the acclaim and the deed are a little out of whack, you know? And what I would like to see is the Jaden I saw maybe a year and a half ago, before wall punching Jaden, that guy.
That Jaden was there in the playoffs, though, is worth noting.
Good point. Very good point.
But you are right. It was the numbers during the regular season. It was the defense was better with him off than on, which is crazy. That is highlighting these things, is the mismanaging the delicate things, right? Is probably what led to that. What I want to do, and what I think is hard sometimes in our jobs, of like when you're following a team every single day and writing about it, talking about it, whatever, you get really used to the things that a player can't do or does not do consistently, and you prescribe those to be facts of the matter. And I think what I want to do with myself is be more open to the idea that with both Ant and Jaden, that they can do more of those delicate things that they have never really shown that they can do consistently.
Right.
And that's a fair thing to be open-minded to because they're young. And that's what maturity theoretically does. Humans, right, is a better ability to manage nuance. And I think with both of them, and Jaden in this sort of way of not being able to just be one or the other, have a good offensive game or a good defensive game, or be able to be on ball or only off ball, like the ability that he can maybe do a couple of different things over the course of the week well, right? Over the course of multiple different games, or opening up the possibility that Ant and Cat might be an awesome two-man pairing, when I've seen for many years that be really just not work lots and lots of time. But maybe because they're 23 years old and 24 years old now, there's a level of being able to do things consistently that they've never even been able to do frequently, if that makes sense.
And two things I want to say about that. One is that you've got Western Conference Finals on both of their resumes now.
Yep.
I think that's going to make them hungrier. Both of those two guys seem like the kind of guys who will not be satisfied with that level. They will say, we are close. Let's take that step. They both seem like not ring or bust guys, but we need rings to walk
hungry.
To walk proud. Exactly. Hungry is the easiest way to put it. The other thing is, as you were saying, we get bogged down in the idea of what people can and can't do. I get cautious. Oh, don't mess with Jaden's mindset because it might do this, what if you have the belief, because they are young and they are both incredibly talented, and they both have demonstrated in their own very, very different ways that they are committed to being better. Ant leaves and goes and does things and then comes back and shows everybody what he's got. And Jaden stays in town and just grinds in front of the people who, the development guys and everything. And what I'm saying is maybe you won't get an 8 from him on ball defense. You'll only get a 6. But instead on transition defense, you'll go from like a 2 to a 5. And when you add up all the numbers of all the components of ways they help the team, you wind up with a higher number. You wind up with a more rounded player. And Ant has been rounding himself off really well.
Totally.
In part because he has such magnificent talent that only a fool would diminish him and say, no, you can't do that. Whereas Jaden, it's like, you can't say that to everybody. You're saying it to Ant. You can't say, well, Jaden, you can do everything too, because we got Kat, we got Rudy, we got Mike Conley. But I do think, as we were just talking before about develop team while you're keeping this team going, that you have a situation where Jaden is going to be encouraged to do things. He's going to be encouraged more than he's ever been encouraged. Finch in part 3 of the interview, when we talk about, are you anticipating and factoring in the development of Ant in your schemes? He was saying, no, we let Ant show us what he's done, and then we'll factor it in. But he says we are factoring in Jaden.
Jaden, yeah, I like that. I like that. And I think that makes sense, and that to have an aspiration
because you need
going for it.
You need Jaden to know, hey, the light, the green light is on for you in a place that you didn't have it. I mean, Finch flat out told me in this interview situation a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, we just can't call Jaden's number. It's just not the way that our offense can work. And now it's like, let's get Jaden more involved. That was, unilaterally introduced by him when I said, what are some of the priorities for offensive tweaks? And that was on his list.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one, because the logic behind not turning it up in the past was there's no room to turn it up. There's a bunch of mouths to feed, right? Ant needs his usage, cat needs his usage. So that's just going to be an interesting thing to track because there's not really fewer mouths to feed out there anymore.
Right. But you know what the response to that will have to be, and Finch is exactly the guy to deliver it. When you're not 17th on offense, you can tell me. You can tell me that you want the status quo.
Yeah.
But if you're 17th on offense, you can't tell me that you get the status quo. The status quo isn't going to hold anymore.
No, that's fair. Status quo is changing with the addition of Rob Dillingham. I think I could hear the kids at recess at the park outside of there. So
yeah, you probably can.
That means it's time to talk about Rob Dillingham.
Right.
I loved how the Dillingham, again, everybody go read. There's like so many quotes in here that we're talking about what they're saying. Like the Finch quotes are so great. This one I really loved. You just asked like what about like developing Dillingham while competing, just what is reasonable to expect from Rob Dillingham. And what Finch said, he goes, I mean, what is reasonable is that he plays well 1 out of 3 nights. And then you just hope that one of those other 2 nights, you don't notice him. And of course, he is going to have that not so good 3rd night. Love that answer. And then that was affirmed with the commitment of we're gonna keep letting him go. Maybe the minutes will change, but that had to struck you right once he dropped that.
It's just classic Finch. I mean, Finch is able to nothing but the facts. I'm not ripping this guy. I'm not doing, but what happened was Tim Connolly came out of draft night raving, just raving.
Yeah,
and I know it came from the fact that he just scored a coup in terms of their financial structure by getting somebody for a 2031 draft pick, which doesn't really affect his sheet that much. I mean, what he got in terms of potential upside for team building versus what he gave up financially was brilliant. It was a brilliant move. And it would have been a brilliant move for any number 8 pick in the draft. It was especially brilliant if Dillingham can check these boxes: Mike Conley replacement, transition guy, a scorer off the ball, on the ball that is not Ant. All these things that were gaping holes in the playoffs, especially against Dallas.
They've been gaping holes the whole Finch era, and Finch has talked about it the whole time. The need for a bucket getter, the design. I mean, he gave Jalen Noel the ample look to fill that role, and the efficiency wasn't there. Shake Milton, other guy. It's been a need, and you're right. That was so highlighted in the playoffs, and that's why Conley was pumped. He's like, this is a guy I love as a prospect, but he also fits. He also fits what my coach wants to play. And
but also what is interesting to me was he was so ebullient about it. He was so ready to be gloried in it that when you put forth the obvious questions, or I put literally it a couple times, said, how is he going to be able to play NBA? We'll throw him in the water. We're not going to protect him. I said, how will you protect him? We're not going to protect him. He's a good kid. We'll throw him in the water. Challenge him, right?
That's what it was.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. 165-pound guy. He's going to have enough challenges without you challenging him. But anyway.
But Finch acknowledges the challenge. That's what he's saying with the 1 in 3 nights. And it's how do we make that work?
But exactly. That was, but Conley didn't want to hear on draft night, especially right after he'd done this. What he wanted you to walk away with is the Wolves have found the guy who was going to be an immediate positive contributor next year. He's going to step in, and Finch put that in perspective. And that was very, very important. For me, the fan base, for everybody, is like, don't ask me to drink Kool-Aid on a 19-year-old rookie when you're trying to win a championship. Tell me exactly what you're going to get out of this guy that is realistic. And Finch gave it to me. I was very gratified by that answer because I said, okay, now I know that they have their head on straight If he can do more than they, will plan for him initially, they'll give him that rope because he is so important. But in the meantime, we don't want to kill his confidence. We may parse him out 6-minute stints, 8 minutes rather than 16 to 8 minutes, because on the nights he's bad, you don't want to, destroy him on those things. I mean, there is a plan in place. Nobody has any doubts that he is part of their future. And if he isn't, it's going to take a big hit to their, future down the road. But they're also saying, let's not load this guy. We're not loading this guy down with the need to, if you don't deliver, we're in deep trouble. You know?
I just real quick to respond to the Conley versus Finch thing, because I think this totally makes sense too. Tim Conley was so pumped on draft night about that because it was such a win within the context of what he had to work with.
Exactly.
Right. If they didn't trade up and go get Rob Dillingham there, like your backup point guard is PJ Dozier or like some equivalent of that. It was a minimum contract because of the second apron. Like that's what it was. So of course, if you're Tim Conley, you're like, I now have a Rob Dillingham chip versus random veteran point guard
Joe Ingles playing way out of position. Right.
Yeah, that is such a more upside attractive. And even in the immediate, like, sure, it has some downside, his size. What's that going to mean for the defense? He's 19, how's that all going to happen? But we would all acknowledge that, like, this hand with Rob Dillingham in it feels a lot better than the one if it would just been veteran point guard X. So you're like, okay, cool. I get why that's Conley's reaction. But now that needs to go through like the Finch grader of what does this actually look like on the floor?
Grater or Grader?
T. And that's fair. It brings it back down to earth some, but it doesn't mean that it feels better. That the Conley's feeling of what it felt like in his hand was awesome. What Finch is laying out, even with the downsides of the 1 in every 3 nights, the accommodations you're going to have to do defensively, maybe making rotation go to 10 guys just so Dillingham isn't chalked up to play 18 minutes a game.
Right.
That's the price. That's really the price more so than it is the draft picks that you had to pay, because they're in this situation of like, yeah, we will willingly pay our draft pick assets to go get something now because we had no other choice. It's going to be really interesting, to see how he all folds into this. What is the 1 in every 3 nights? What I'm also kind of interested in is like, what do those other nights look like? Who are the other guys in the rotation? Right. And I thought obviously he listed the normal solutions that we would expect. More Ant on the ball. Joe Ingles playing some point guard. Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing more point guard than a year ago. But he also, he did. He said Dozier.
I told him he was a poor man, Shake Milton. I thought I'd get a laugh out of him, but I didn't.
Yeah, shocker. But he also mentioned in extending the rotation so as to not have Dillingham be a heavy minutes guy off the bench. The names he kept bringing up were Terrence Shannon Jr. and Josh Minot.
Yes.
He brought up Minot a lot if they do go to a 10-man rotation, of Josh being a guy who will have a shot at that. And I'll say, just like being at Summer League, you're sitting there talking about like the next season and what's going to change. People that I talked to was consistently like, I would think Josh is going to play next year. And I was always like, Minot? Like, but I heard that from multiple places. I didn't really get it from a rotation standpoint, because you're like, okay, well, Naz 6th man, Nickeil 7th man, Dillingham 8th man, Ingles probably in the mix there, Shannon's 10. But when we think about it as a more stretched out rotation in general,
right,
then maybe you do have an 11th guy in that conversation there, and that would be Josh Minot, which I just thought was kind of interesting too.
Well, what Finch said when he was talking about the young guys, and I said the first young guy I think of when you say getting the young guys more involved was one of the priorities. I asked him about the priorities for training camp, and he said, taking a look at some of our young guys. I said, when I hear that, I think Dillingham. And he said, well, TJ and Josh, he did not mention Miller, which I thought was kind of interesting. But and then he said, obviously all three of them can't play, but one and maybe two can. So that's where you go, okay, Shannon, Minot, depending on maybe matchups, maybe caliber. I think Shannon, I was a huge Minot guy his rookie year, and I think he has a knack for creating things, but I also, he's gotten a little bit too, he strains to stand out. And I don't know if that's because he's not getting minutes and he's unhappy with it. And he wants to, he overcompensates and wants to maximize his time on the court and is less kind of in the natural flow of things. I always feel like he's trying to attempt things that are a little bit beyond what he can do. Whereas I really like what I saw out of Shannon, what little, we didn't see a lot, but what I saw, I really liked. But both of those guys can be transition up-tempo guys that can fit into a second unit. I do get the sense that the second unit is going to go.
Sure.
And I also think that what was interesting when we had that exit interview presser with Finch, and nobody else in the room but me thought he was sincere about Kyle Anderson being back. I thought there was a chance for it, and everybody just laughed at me. I said, no, he can't be. You can't. He just can't, doesn't fit. And I'm saying, no, man, listen to how sincere Finch was about this. He wants to build an offense around Kyle Anderson that works. And I think what it was is he wants to build an offense around the Kyle Anderson type that works. And they found a Kyle Anderson type in Joe Ingles when it comes to offense. Who's actually a better shooter?
Well, significantly. Obviously, 37, and he in a later part in the interview alludes to Joe's not going to play every night, and that's
an advantage because then we can play the kids.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like when I was at Summer League and somebody told me Josh Minot's going to play next year, I laughed, and it's because I didn't see how the pieces of it would all. I'm like, well, it seems like to me there's already 10 guys who would be above him there. That's how we get there. And I'm not in the gym all the time. It would make sense too. Josh Minot is like 2 or 3 years younger than Terrence Shannon Jr. And yes, we've watched him in Summer League. We watched these things, but it's kind of like that stuff I was talking about with Ant and Jaden. Like opening my mind up to the idea that something else can be happening in the name here of development, maturity, or just that I don't see or understand that there's something else there. So it's just going to be a cool added wrinkle to the bench of this team. It's going to feel so different than other years. I think it's going to be chaotic. I think that group in like both senses of the word is gonna feel that way.
Yeah, it's gonna be a different version of the Iowa Ants madness. There's this whole idea of flying around and doing different things. The other thing that I thought was interesting was Finch is always a guy that says, if you're healthy, you're playing. If you're not, he is very unyielding in terms of and the idea, Mike says he's fine. So, how little did they rest Conley really in some ways? And so I think he's coming around on this now because I asked him if he was planning his season to be like a double, like an extended playoff season, because I haven't really thought about it that way. It's irresponsible of me, but but I do think if you're going to go deep, if you're going to be playing in late May, then it is a good idea to get the Minots and the Shannons their 6 minutes, or when Ingles is sitting out. And it's a good idea to rest Ingles every now and then. It's a good idea every now and then not to give Ant 36 minutes. Give him 31, and Cat too, for that matter. Right. To have a situation where, because as you just pointed out before, when we were talking about getting down to 7 or 8, in that, what you're doing now is you're entering a season saying, we're going to make the playoffs. The seeding kind of matters, but what matters more is what we have when we get to the playoffs. Right. That is a whole different mindset. the first thing out of Tim Connolly's mouth at Media Day last year was, we have to win a playoff series. Well, the mindset now is we're going to win a ring, and a lot of people don't believe it, but that's what they think. That's the whole purpose of this is we are going for it all. I mean, the way Connolly is approaching things is we have to punt 20, 31 picks. We have to get a Joe Ingles here or somebody here. He doesn't want to stay in the second apron for 3 years. So what that means is when you're in that second apron, those better be damn good seasons.
No, absolutely.
And so I think he is thinking, we're at the final four at the table. He's got both sides of the ownership dispute over a barrel because both of them can't be the responsible. We're not going to spend that money. They're in the court of public opinion as well as everything else with this ownership dispute. And so if you don't give Connolly leeway to do things, then, and Connolly is thinking at the same time, we're in the mix. He talks about it being at the table, the final four table, So if that's true, then I think we're looking at a team that is thinking about how to get to middle of May, late May.
I think so too. I think they're also like wise enough to know that they're like at the table, but like over the course of the season, they got to like learn some manners and like, so it's like seriously, like there's
not eat with your knife.
They do though. Like they're going to need to build the ship as it sails over the course of the season. And part of that is just from the decisions of some of the roster decisions that they made, some of these young guys that we're talking about, but more importantly, the things we were talking about at the beginning of this episode of like the Ant and Cat chemistry being reestablished. If you were going to win a championship, there is no way you win a championship and that doesn't happen.
Right.
If you don't, there's no way you win a championship and the Ant and Rudy thing doesn't come together. There is no way you win a championship and Jaden doesn't take a step forward on offense or get out in transition a little bit more. The good thing is those are all like relatively attainable things. Not for sure. None of those things are for sure, but it's an interesting like championship contender, right? Quote unquote championship contender.
Right.
Because most of them are like, all right, here's our 9 guys. We're a championship contender if we like stay healthy and we end up being like a good team that doesn't have like infighting, right? Like that's like your more typical contender. This one is like, we're going to figure our way out into being a contender over the course of the season, which sounds like a fake contender, but I don't know. In this sense, I don't think it is because they were already a Western Conference Finals team a year ago, and they're young. That's huge too.
And it's not, I don't want to, this may be a real reach, but I feel like what OKC went through last year, they had SGA, they were adding, Chet or whatever, but they were figuring out that bench.
Sure.
And that bench had a lot of interesting pieces, but you didn't really know how it necessarily was going to come together. How Joe fit in, how
the
Holiday
Joe versus
fit in.
Giddy, like
exactly.
You saw them wrestling that through the season of they were like Giddy was the Kyle Anderson sort of thing where you're like, need that, don't need that. Like, how do we get to it? And they eventually get to the playoffs and they're like, all right, Giddy, sit down. Joe, you get in there. And Isaiah Joe started starting, in the playoffs. But those are the things that even really good teams like, Oklahoma City was the 1 seed last year, or Denver last year, they were going to need to build the ship over the course of the season because they lost their depth and they didn't. And neither of those teams did. The team that actually built it along the way last year through a brilliant trade deadline was Dallas.
Right.
Maybe that is just what being a contender is.
But that was a brilliant trade.
I know, but it's whatever. It's building it along the way.
Right.
None of those teams were like really what they were coming in. They had to figure it out, and Dallas was the team who figured it out best. The Wolves, a close second there, and they figured out a ton last year too. But I don't know.
But obviously, what you need is synergy. You need your stars to recognize how they synergize others. And that is one of the things. And then you need guys. Lively and Gafford, where are Lively and Gafford as Lucas isn't on that team? I mean, come on. And so, but at the same time, hey, Luca, I've never seen you enable people like you enabled those guys last year. And so that's as you would just your point about Ant.
Yeah.
You know, you need your big guy to enable, and you know, and Rudy needs to continue to be that mature adult in the room, sacrificing himself in ways that people don't realize to do these things. I think Cat, and I mentioned this to Finch, the fact that he threw a couple of monkeys off his back with the way he defended both Durant and Jokic, and it wasn't like he was the best defender for them. He was the best defender for the team. Being on Durant was the best Wolves team defense. Being on Jokic was the Wolves' best team defense. The more you figure out those things, the more you become both a more coalesced.
You become the best version of yourself. That's how you, that's
exactly. And so the fact that Cat was key to that was like one of the most pleasant surprises of the year. Is that Karl Anthony Towns is kind of like your defensive skeleton key. You know, I mean, oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's true.
And that which totally gets to your open-minded approach this year, because things are going to surprise us, and I'm sure there's going to be. I mean, you know, all these words are meaningless if like Rudy Gobert breaks his leg in the fifth game of the season. You know what I mean? It's like. The Wolves got lucky last year. There were not that many injuries to key personnel. And so it always is capricious. But the idea that there will be pleasant surprises as well as unpleasant surprises, we have a team that has a real strong taste of the playoffs under their belt. And the only other Wolves team that has had that in my time covering the team and in their fucking team history, for that matter, was a team that imploded that very next year.
Yeah.
Over contracts and over style and all these other things. It was Sam Spree and KG, that whole troika, and it fell apart.
2005, yeah.
And the Butler Cat thing made the 8th seed, but had like the 3 seed. Everybody liked to say until Jimmy got hurt, they were a 3 seed, and they had a lot of potential. Wiggins that imploded. So what we have here, I think, is Conley, Finch, Ant, Rudy, Conley. You've got a depth of what I regard as trustworthy people working on this right now.
Well, that's what I was trying to be like. How do I say it just doesn't feel like those other times?
Right.
And I do think it's that, and maybe that's just the rose-colored glasses thing, but it really does. It doesn't feel anywhere near as combustible as, well, I could speak to the Jimmy year. Like that was my first year on the beat, was the first Jimmy season, the second, my second year.
Yeah, that was never Jimmy and Jamal Crawford in the locker room together looking over that will always be my enduring image. Yeah. Cat never went to that side, and it was only like 8 feet away.
Right, and it like you don't even need to. I mean, I think that stuff mattered, and I reference that stuff all the time too. But it showed up on the floor too. There was just it showed up in the coat. I mean, Tibbs, like there was I think he skipped the interview with you that year.
Tom Thibodeau waging war against his future. I mean, it was just so fucked up.
Yeah, and there's not there's I don't know, and maybe there's something that we're missing, but it just really doesn't. It really doesn't feel like that at all this year, which is going to make all this stuff super fun to track in training camp and moving forward. There's these two other parts to Britt's interview that we didn't hardly touch on, and I don't know, maybe you and I can do one later this week, like on Friday or something.
Sure.
To talk about those, but I think this is just an awesome table setter for fans, to dig into the season, get into Finch's mind, what seems like a really genuine place or a genuine representation of where he's at in his head about all of these things, in the sense that there's some of the things he's still figuring out too. And you can tell in his answers to Britt there. So again, check this all out, MinnPost.com. Obviously Britt's tweeted these all out. I think it's really the like one piece of Wolves content out there right now, but we're 1 week away exactly from media day and seeing
That's
where
right.
this
A week from today, right.
where we'll feed on top of this and new things will come. We'll
and
get
then
more perspective.
3 weeks after that, we're 4 weeks away from the opener. Is that right?
The opener
October
is
22nd. No, 5 weeks in. 5 weeks, I think.
Yeah, 29 days or whatever. Yeah, it's crazy. It's coming. Well, and even October 4th is the first preseason game in Palm Springs against the. Like that's not far. That's not far away at all. It's this is all. The offseason goes a lot quicker when your team plays all the way through May. So, but I'm personally like Brett. I'm excited. I'm ready to like just get digging into all this stuff. And that starts next week with training camp. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to talk about more of these things back there, but we're already way over an hour here. So maybe you and I will get together Friday.
Hey,
Otherwise,
whenever works for you. I'm
chilling.
I
just working on your DJ game, you know.
It's just one of the things that I love doing this at the time I do it.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I did do with him was in Summer League, and it worked then because the first half of it was about him as a coach and what he learned from his half season coming in and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the last 2 or 3, I can't, wherever he is on the trajectory, have been in September, and he's had time to think. He knows the personnel. He didn't really know the personnel totally well the first time we did it. Yeah. And
I think that was 2021. Yeah. That was the one Summer League you came to.
Okay. So that was, so there's only been 2 after that, then 22, 3. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it is 3. What I can just say is that I'm continually astonished by the fact that it's so obvious he's a straight shooter with his players, because he says shit directly to us that he's already said to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, and he's also confident that they're not. I mean, he says some stuff about Ant in the last part. The first half of the last part is pretty much all dwelling on some chronic flaws of Ant's, and he's very straightforward about them. Mm-hmm. And it's just refreshing that a guy who's, some being talked about as the MVP in some quarters, at the very least, is talked about as one of the faces of the game and one of the top 10 players in the game or whatever. A coach can have such a cool relationship and also be confident in his own skin enough to just casually talk about some of his frustrations, some of the ways that he and Ant are trying to negotiate some of these flaws. Yeah. That's just to be a guy covering this team and having a coach just tell you this stuff and then be able to tell everybody else. Yeah. I mean, you want me on Friday, I'm all for it. I love doing this stuff. I mean, it's just
it's fun.
I mean, it is just it's a blessing to have people who know what they're doing and don't mind sharing what they're doing in a way that it is not at all deceptive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just so rare. I mean, I've covered this team for over 30 years, and that's rare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the record, it's extremely rare that somebody would have the confidence to have a no BS conversation with you, and that's what this is. 70 minutes of text is basically, like, I was thinking about this whole article series is basically a podcast. It's basically a podcast in four-part written form, but there's something nice about it being in little.
Well, you get to digest it, so yeah. It is. It isn't. I mean, it's a MinnPost thing, but I mean, it's at the same time. I've begun to accommodate some things there.
I actually think it works. Now we've talked about that before. Like I think it is so long that it is probably good to break it up a little bit. Okay, so let's plan on doing that. Britt and I will come back on Friday for another episode to talk about the second half of this interview. Maybe just at that point, I know I'm going to spend this week kind of planning some stuff for media day. Just thinking about questions or whatever to ask players and coaches and stuff. So Britt and I will talk again on Friday. As I mentioned off the top, Kyle and I will be going live on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central on Wednesday night. Again, it's just a podcast. It'll be a podcast the next morning, but we're going to take a lot of questions and stuff from people in the chat when we'll try and start doing some of those this year to give you guys, particularly in these times where we don't have a lot of stuff to talk about specifically answer your questions, kind of like Britt and I do at when we have the live shows and that. So that's coming up for the rest of the week, and we're back in the swing of things, man. The Britt Finch interview is here, and that means the season is here too. Thanks for doing it, Britt.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right, until Wednesday with Kyle or Friday with Britt. He's Britt. You follow him on Twitter at Britt Robson. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.